Let's move on now to the Miami Dolphins Training Camp Series preview, where we break down the top stories that we feel are most important to watch throughout the Miami Training Camp, which will include, is Tyreek Hill is he capable enough in this offense to get to 2,000 yards? We think so. How is Tua going to do when healthy? How's the offensive line, and I guess just the entire offense in general, going to be after the second year, or as we're entering the second year in the Mike McDaniel's offense? And so we're going to break down all those stories and our thoughts and storylines to watch in the Miami Dolphins training camp. But before we do that, if you have not already, hit the subscribe button and also ring the bell to get notified when we create new content. We're doing a training camp preview for all 32 teams, and we are also going to be doing weekly prediction videos of every single game throughout the entire season. And if you want to see those Miami Dolphins prediction videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to get notified. And Ryan, let's get into it here.
Let's do it.
Miami Dolphins have arguably the quickest offense in the league entering the 2023 season. I would say just with all the speed. I think Tyreek Hill alone makes them the quickest offense.
So that was actually, there was an interesting thing going on around Twitter. I think Tyreek Hill tweeted this out, but it was like, what if you're running a 4x1 or a 4x100? Which NFL team would win? And it's like you got Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill on one team, and it's like that's hard to compete with. Like they might have the fastest team.
Well, and then now you add Devon Achane as well.
Yeah, Devon Achane.
And so it's this has some speed. It has some absolute. And then you have Liam Eichenberg, who'll probably start it off. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, especially too with the offensive mastermind of Mike McDaniel, I think what he brings, I think an era of calmness and explosiveness as well with his presence and then for this team. And I think we've seen this offense just absolutely explode. We saw that in the Baltimore game where they came back and had an amazing comeback victory over the Ravens. I believe it was in week 3 or week 4. Also, that was a great showing of Tua's development. And unfortunately, he had the concussion issues last year, and just now, not too long ago, just got cleared of all the concussions to play. But I think that's going to be the storyline overall for Miami, because not too much really changed to this team outside of a couple of acquisitions, Jalen Ramsey being one. But can this offense build off of the successes of the from the 2022 season, even with the inconsistencies of the roster, just with key players being injured, such as Tua with the concussion? And so I think with all of them and a majority of the same roster being on the team for back-to-back years, I think they better understand the offense now. They know how it can be utilized and know its strength. They maybe add some things to the offense. And so that to me is what I'm very curious to watch in the Miami training camp.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of my biggest concerns with Tua is he came out and said that he really contemplated retiring this offseason. And that's kind of scary to think about when you think he was only really in his 3rd season. And that was that was his career best year, but he had 3 concussions and was in concussion protocol till I think mid-June. And so that's scary to think about. And I'm curious of his mindset coming back. And so that's scary. I also think you look at this offense statistically, and they had a really, really hot start to the season. And I think this is also coupled with Tua's injuries and whatnot, but that waned as the season went on. And his completion percentage went down. The offense's overall effectiveness went down. But then they had a really good performance in Buffalo that they ended up losing in a really close game, but they had a good performance in Buffalo in the first week of the playoffs. I do credit some of that to a very weak Buffalo defense, but they did really struggle at certain points on the offensive side of the ball throughout the season. So that's going to be really interesting to see if they can bounce back. For me, the biggest thing that is going to throw this team off, though, offensive line. They have, I think, 4 new offensive linemen, but they signed Isaiah Wynn after the draft as like a scrap. The only offensive lineman they drafted was Ryan Hayes, who was taken in the 7th round, I believe. And then they had one other guy whose name I can't pronounce. And then I believe Dan Feeney, the center guard that they signed from the Jets, who I think is the only one that might actually make a starting role. And so this offensive line was horrid last year. It just didn't matter because they would get the ball out so quick and they were so fast that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think with Tua's issues with the concussions, they really needed to invest heavily into this offensive line, and they didn't.
Well, and that's where they didn't, but they couldn't really do that in their defense. So it's one of the storylines to watch is like, should we be expecting the same old, or will the offseason acquisitions that they did collect, can some of them pan out? Can they find something, And so I think that's one of the things, and it's a great point that can kind of lead to the inconsistency, especially with how quick this offense needs to be. Tua needs to be able to make those reads because he's going to have 4 or 5 reads on each play, so he needs that time. I think one helpful antidote to the inconsistency of the offense is having a consistent defense, and I think one of the key acquisitions that also kind of went under the radar outside because of the Jalen Ramsey trade was they're getting the defense coordinator Vic Fangio as well. Yeah. His defense is very young, very aggressive. We saw that with Jalen Phillips and Christian Wilkins getting after Josh Allen in the AFC wild card round. They can get after the quarterback, and they love playing very aggressive. They're all very young, very quick. I think adding a Ramsey who still has maybe a little bit of juice left in the legs for one final run, pair him up with Xavier Howard. This defense could be scary. So if their offense isn't consistent, but if their defense can consistently just bring the pressure, make it hard for teams to score, I think that's going to help with the consistency of their wins. Yes, maybe they're not going to be able to put up 35 points a game and have these explosive plays. Maybe they're going to have some 17-point offensive days. But if their defense can keep them in games and make it tough for the other team to score, that is going to help out that offense. And one of their storylines is just similar to the offense because there wasn't too many other acquisitions outside of the Jalen Ramsey trade. But can they continue that positive momentum that they created last year and that we saw in the AFC AFC wildcard round and continue with that youth and have them become more veteran experience and become more dominant?
Yeah, and I think this defense fits Vic Fangio really, really well personnel-wise that they have already. I am curious to see Jalen Ramsey in a more zone-heavy scheme because when he was in LA and they were running zone-heavy schemes, he was not one of the top corners in the league. What he really excels at is I'm bigger and better than you in matching up one-on-one with some of these wide receivers, and that's how he made his name.
Yeah.
He's also turning 29 in October. I know there's not really an age limit on corners, but he is getting up there in age. As well as Xavier Howard is also, I believe, 30. I could be wrong on that, but correct me down in the comments. So that's going to be really interesting to see what he's able to do. But
I would say 47. That's a good age limit.
47.
Yeah, if you're a 47-year-old corner, that's probably like okay, no, just based on age. Yeah.
Well, if you're what is it, Vontae Davis? That was the cornerback that retired at halftime for the Bills.
Yeah,
I think he was like 33.
I think he was a linebacker. I thought.
No, he was a corner.
He was okay.
Yeah, but no. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see. They really, in my opinion, only made 1 or 2 big additions, and that was on the defensive side of the ball. All the other offensive additions to me are a little moot. They did draft Devon Achane with his speed, but he's also very, very small. So I'm curious to see what that looks like at the NFL level. But
I still think, and just last thing, like then entering like the 2023 season is like prediction wise, if healthy, like this team made the playoff last year with a lot of inconsistency, and this AFC was loaded. I think that they can do it again, especially if healthy, and I think they can contend for the division title. Yeah, I really believe that.
I also agree. One of the big things now too is they have the second toughest strength of schedule. The AFC East really got the short end of the stick as a whole in terms of strength of schedule, and I'm not sure how this team is going to hold up throughout all 17 games. If they can do that, right? Yes, they're one of the most explosive offenses in the league, and they can put up 35 on anybody. But I just think with the lack of offensive line moves that they made, I just think the same things are going to kind of continue to plague this team. right? Because they're, in my opinion, more of collecting players instead of building a solid team.
Yeah.
And see, but let's go ahead and wrap up the Dolphins training camp preview there. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe and leave a comment down below on what you think of the Miami Dolphins. Do you think they're going to be really good and potentially win the division and go to the playoffs in 2023? Or do you think they're going to be plagued by a lot of the same things that plagued them in 2022 as far as injuries and weak offensive line play? Let us know down below. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.